Well, first of all, let me give you some announcements, and then I'm going to introduce Randy Mills, who's here to speak with us tonight. But first of all, next month's presentation on October 11th is Music in Our Lives. November 11th. Oh, yeah, that's true. November.
Now you're like me on those days.
Yeah. Marion and Gordon Mitchell are going to be singing and talking to us about music. Thank you to Louis for helping set that up. And I want to thank tonight Bill Piper, who's the president of the Historical Society, for sponsoring this event. Our goal is to have presentations that are interesting to the community, young people and adults. And I think this is going to definitely be one of those. I want to thank Tracy Underhill over here, director of the library. Tracy's co-sponsoring and also hosting us tonight. Thank you for that.
It's my pleasure.
And by the way, what do you think of the new murals Tracy had put in the room here? These are fantastic.
I think it's beautiful.
It's great. Thanks to Ann Hager, too, who's helped a lot with the Historical Society. Ann couldn't be here tonight, but she works here in the genealogy department. And let's see, Stephanie Farrell. She's helped us get the news out, and we appreciate that a lot, too. Come on in.
Thank you. Hey, Randy, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, watch out for the deers when you go
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Good to see you.
I have to buy another car when I.
That's okay.
So let me introduce you to this man here. Randy and I have talked several times on the phone and then this evening, and it's been great to get to know you. And I love the stories you can tell. And they always have meaning behind them too, and I think that's what we'll find tonight as well. Well, Randy is an Indiana and Midwest historian and author, a retired professor at Oakland City College, University now. He's written several military history books on the experience of common soldiers. And matter of fact, I just found out today you and your wife have co-authored a new book, or two books now?
Yeah, we have two now, so. You talk about Summer Wind?
Yep,
Okay.
that's the new one, isn't it?
Yes, that's the new one.
Okay. And let's see, he's done an autobiography of Indiana's first governor, Jonathan Jennings. Has written a Midwestern frontier religious book, Christ Tasted Death for Every Man, the story of America's frontier General Baptist. I think that'd be interesting.
Anybody that's been to Oakland City can do on that one now.
Okay. And lots of articles for magazines and journals. Now, he also wrote a basketball memoir of his high school days in Southern Illinois. And I've heard a few tales tonight that makes me want to buy this book. Have you ever heard of somebody playing basketball and using 2x4s? This is serious, I think. This is very serious. Here's what Randy and his wife said. I'm going to read this. If there's a constant theme in the books and history articles we love to write, it centers on two things: the heroic actions of common, ordinary people when placed in extraordinary circumstances, and the sacredness found in common, everyday moments of life. Well, that is really exemplified in this book, which Sherry and I have loved to read as if by magic. This is about Larry Bird in his high school years, and I want to tell you, it's a real testament to what any person, young or old, can do if they're willing to work hard and be dedicated at it. And you just see that all over this book of Larry Bird. What a great example.
You know, it hits me too, finding your gift.
Mm-hmm.
If you find the gift, it's so easy, but it's finding the damn thing that's hard to find.
Go treasure hunting. So with all that said, I will say that after the presentation, we're going to be up here with books that you can buy and have autographed. I hope you'll do that. And lastly, I just want to say thank you, Randy Mills, for coming here to present this. We really appreciate it.
I'm excited about it. My connection to Crawford County comes through going to Oakland City College. I grew up in a very rural place, very much like many of the smaller communities around here. In fact, I would say where I came from is probably smaller. Our little grade school, I think we had 8. My in my graduating class in 8th grade. So when I came to Oakland City in 1969, I ran around with the Pike County kids and the Crawford County kids because we all talked the same language. We all understood things the same way in whatever that culture is. You just, that's when I realized, hey, there's other places around like this as well. So I have I've had a lot of students over the years from here and other students who were at Oakland City when I was there, and even some before me that I knew of. In fact, I think you guys were probably seniors when I was a freshman.
Graduated in 70.
Okay, and I came there in 69, 70, so that year, because I remember you guys, I remember playing intermediate basketball against Larry Eastridge, and that wasn't fun. Bounced me around a little bit, and I thought I was pretty big. He must have played some of the 2x4 basketball. So I want to give you a little bit of background, maybe with just the whole, in a sense, the writing process itself, because it's pretty connected, what we write about. So I graduated from Oakland City in 1973. I taught at Lagodi for 10 years. And then I started teaching at Oakland City College, taught at Indiana USI for a few years, and came back to Oakland. Kind of liked little more than I liked big. And as a part of my job as a teacher, you're supposed to write articles for journals. Well, if they're going to make me write an article, I'm going to write something I care about. So I always liked military history. I was always interested in that, so I became a historian. That became my expertise. And I would go in and I'd interview these guys that had been to the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And you start out and you ask them to talk about things, and they have letters to share with you and so forth. And the first thing you get in that first interview is just name, rank, and serial number, because they're feeling you out. You know, I want to tell you this stuff. And then the second time you go, they tell you the funny stories. And then the third time you go, you start hearing other stuff. So and then I'd get their letters, and I would read, and I'd compare what they were saying, what other people had said about being at the same place. And I would use that to refine it and get down to some kind of nub of, this is probably what happened. But you know, you can have 6 people looking at a car wreck and you're gonna get 6 different stories. But you want to emphasize the things that are alike. You do the same with basketball stories as well, because you'll get 6 different stories. I put a thing on Facebook the other day, if you saw it, about that Lagodi Pike Central game. Pike Central was 18-2. And Gerald, I think we rode to that game with you guys, because that was during the blizzard. And there was a last second shot that they waved off that Pike Central would have won the game, and Lagodi beat them in double overtime. Well, they still fight over that. And there's even a picture of the scoreboard, the guy with the ball in his hand, and they're still arguing about, you know, whether that got doctored or not. But anyway, you start looking at these different pieces, and you finally find a narrative that you can feel pretty good about. The problem I ran into with military history was, toward the end, I got to the spot where they'd say, turn off the tape recorder. Because I got them back there. And they had to tell it. And it was hard. It was hard listening to that. I heard things that you should never hear. What happened to them, what they did to someone, or what they saw. And some of them were even highly religious, believe it or not, where a miraculous thing happened. And they never told anybody because it seemed so impossible, but they wanted to tell that and share that. One guy told a story, I'll just tell you this real quick. He was at the Chosin Reservoir. The Chinese were coming down at night and attacking the little base there. So they sent him and 6 other guys up there to stop them from coming down that mountainside. And they were in a machine gun nest, like this little hole area. And he said, Randy, I was sitting there and I saw them coming down at us. And all of a sudden I heard my wife say, I heard her, Randy, I heard her say, it's gonna be okay. And he said, they just split like water around a rock, like we weren't there. So he shared that with me. And I said, can I put that in the book? That's pretty good. And so that's in one of my military history books. But anyway, I was getting nightmares. So I decided, what am I gonna write next? Well, I decided to write about my own basketball experiences. I went to the little grade school. I think we won one game against the Catholic school that didn't have an indoor gym. And somewhere along the line, I won't go into a lot of information about this. It was fun to write. I had never played on a team that won any games. And then my freshman year, when we went to the bigger town where I went to the little small school, we won all our freshman games that year. We were the feature, and it was junior varsity, so we were knocking out sophomores and juniors. The next year, I started varsity and knocked out a senior. The rest were seniors. That was fun. But anyway, I had a blast because I got in a few headlines, and I went from not knowing what I was doing, using 2x4s out in Horse Creek, and now I'm playing varsity basketball. I even got my name in a headline. The next year, we won 21 games in a row. The next year, we had the longest winning streak in the state, got beat by Doug Collins in the second game of the regional. So I've been everywhere. I've won one game. I played on a high school team where I played on the worst team and the best team. It's still the best record percentage-wise. So I've been on both ends of things. So I wrote about it, and this is really about my dad. And because he wanted me to play basketball in college, and I was done with it. I hated my senior year. I was just so much pressure. And so it's called An Almost Perfect Season. We lost our first game and then won all the rest. So after that came out, I started getting hits on Facebook. Hundreds. And a couple of NBA players even commented, hey, this is really good. And I thought, wow, I've hit on something here. And what I realized, I got to thinking back and I thought, the 60s and the 70s were a golden age of high school basketball. Single class. A little school like mine where I could play on a team that won one game. And if you hung in there, we came back and had the longest winning streak of the state and got beat by Doug Collins. Now, not many people can say that. So we've all had those experiences, but I realized something else in writing that book and getting comments from it before I did the Larry Bird book, and that is that it really didn't matter what size school you came from, whether it was small or big. The narratives are always the same. When you're sitting there listening, you wouldn't know whether you were talking about Springs Valley or the greatest high school The stories are still the same. We should have won that one. I screwed up. I made that shot. The excitement's the same. The communities were alive. The communities are gone now. The interstates and the Walmarts and all that. I mean, it's just not here anymore. But back in that golden age, it was. So what I realized when I started giving these talks with this book and later on is that it's old guys like us and communities and cheerleaders and people that were there in those schools that love to talk about this because that day's gone. It's never coming back. And it was such a good thing. It was our initiation to manhood, I think, for many of us, of youngsters. I was reading a book the other day, and a guy said, and I really like this quote, he said, I don't care what level of high school of basketball you played, during that age, it didn't matter. There would be that one moment when you were playing, and maybe you were never very good, but you'd make that one good pass, that one good shot, that one good steal, and everybody would stop and go, wow. And they can't take that away. You can take that with you. So when I did my next book, I decided, who am I going to write about? I thought, this is kind of interesting because when I was teaching at Lagodi played Springs Valley, and Larry Bird. I saw Larry play in that, and it's all in the book. So I got to thinking about how much I knew Larry. So I went to school with Mark, Larry's brother. Maybe we ought to just, we got it ready to go. We'll look at that here. I'll start playing off of that. So I remember Mark bringing his brother to school, to college, and it was Mark Bird's brother. I didn't even know his name. And if you talked to him, he'd look down like that. He would have been a sophomore, and he was nothing. And then his senior year, maybe the best that ever played. And that's the title, As If by Magic. So I started looking at that and I thought, and so now we can start, if you want to back up a
We'll
little
go to
bit.
the beginning.
Yeah, let's go at the beginning. So, yeah, so it occurred to me and I realized that Larry didn't do this by himself. You know, I started writing about how Larry just by magic became famous overnight. That's not how it happened. People helped him. There were events in Larry's life and people in Larry's life that if they hadn't been there and that event hadn't happened, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. I mean, how many times did he just not quite turn the corner, but he did because of certain people that were there for him. So the book ended up being more about that than anything else. Well, then I got to write, I thought, okay, the people that played against him were a part of it. They made him better. One of them's in the room here. Mike Cleegers and Jasper, we're going to see your picture up here a little bit too, Mike. But there were so many people that Larry played against, and this is Indiana basketball. I read a book one time about Larry Bird, an outsider, a sports writer was writing about Larry Bird and when he played in high school. He said, you know, one of the problems Larry had was the competition wasn't very good. Bullshit. I mean, really, we're talking Indiana. And this guy just didn't know what he was talking about. But you look at those, the big guys. You played at DePaul. Eubanks from Paoli went to Purdue as a football captain. He couldn't play basketball. Dave Smith went to Louisville. Yeah, he's going to try to be here tonight.
Kurt Gilson.
Kurt, yeah, thank you. Kurt, who also went to Louisville and then came to Oakland City. There were some great ones out there that he played against that made him better. Larry didn't always win. That's another thing. You watch these clippings of Larry Bird playing, and that's the worst thing in the world you can do, because when you watch those clippings, you think that Larry never made a mistake, because everything he's doing are just like those miracle-like passes and so forth. That didn't happen like that, and it didn't happen overnight. Larry had to earn it. He had to have help. So here's probably the most important person in his life was his mother. And the next one is his father. And the next one, I'm going to talk about his dad a little bit. So the Kearnses were from Hillham. Her dad worked construction. They weren't the richest people in the world. Alcoholism in the family. Her father was an alcoholic. She married Joey Bird, and he also had a drinking problem, which stayed with him all his life. I lost a son to alcohol, so I know what that's like, and it's a disease, it's demonic, and it plays out almost the same way if you don't get recovery. This is how it's going to happen. So those stories all sound very familiar if you look at people when they struggle with that. He was also traumatized in Korea. He had to kill a guy, hand-to-hand combat, and so he would wake up a lot of times at night, you know, screaming and hollering and hitting at people and so forth. So he had a very difficult time. Of course, people didn't understand that at the time. One of the things that happened when the first book came out about Larry, it was written by Larry's aunt, by his mother's sister. And she gave a tell-all. She told about all the stuff going on in the family. And so when people started coming to Springs Valley to get information about Larry shut it down. He said, I don't want anything said about that. So who was a beneficiary of that was me. Because when I wrote it, it was a long time after that and people were ready to talk, and so I was able to get back in there. The other problem was you didn't have the newspaper access that I had, so I was able to go back and find a lot of pictures I'm going to have up here as well. Let's go to the next one. Mike, who was the oldest, I think they had 4 kids in 5 or 6 years, so they were all bunched up together and poor. They were the poorest family in a poor town, to give you some point of reference there. Next, there's Mark, number 33. There's a chapter in the book, number 33. Everybody thinks it's going to be about Larry. In Springs Valley, the custom was you got your brother's number. So Charlie Carnes, Kevin Carnes, Beezer Carnes. I think they were 34, weren't they? I believe we'll see up here because I got some pictures of them there. And then with the Birds, it was 33. So that's where that number came from. And so Larry talks in his book Drive and about his early days of shagging balls for Mark and learning how to shoot. And I remember watching Mark shoot there in Oakland City. Boy, if he got hot from the corners, he's just like Larry. Boom, 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 boom. Next. That's another one of them there. Mark, next. There's several of Mark. So, here's another incident that Larry talks about in the book Drive. He said, this is funny. He said, the most important thing that changed my life, he had 3 different stories, but this is one of them. The most important thing that changed my life, story number 1, was going and seeing Mark as a senior play and score the 2 foul shots in 2 overtimes, and I think they beat, Crawford County teams
Milltown?
that year? Yeah, did they beat Leavenworth too that year? I can't remember that. They played 2 games to get there. But anyway, I'll remember that. That'll come up. So there he is getting the trophy. And he was, I found out later it was in the Louisville Courier. He was sick. They didn't think he was going to play. And then Larry says in Drive, he said, I was just sick. Did you know he never came to a high school basketball game till that game? He was a freshman, and he didn't even care enough, and he was nervous around people, and it just made him upset. So he came to this game, and Mark scores those 2 winning, and remember the year before in 70? Let's go back to 69. Springs Valley was playing in Huntingburg, at the Huntingburg sectional. They had won several times during that time. Gerald, I won't tell your story about Charlie Carnes. But they dominated in that when they started playing there. I think when Jim started in 63. And then they won in 64 and made that run, 64, 65, 66, 69. And it's said that Cabby O'Neill went up to headquarters and got them put into Paoli sectional. Let's talk about that in my book. So Coach Jones says, that's okay, we'll dominate. They're even weaker over there. And in 1970, they were 15-5 and got beat by Paoli. So he had to eat some crow there. 71, they make amends. So they came into that 12-7 or 12-5 and ended up winning the sectional. Next, please. So is this the one with Mark?
Yeah, Mark's in there.
Okay, so that's Mark. I can't tell them apart. So this is Danny King here. Isn't it? Yeah. That's Mark, Steve Land. Where's Tony Clark? I think that's Kevin. There, Kevin Carnes. Anyway, that was
There's a Jay Carnes, Kevin Carnes, and head coach Jim Jones.
okay. So Larry said after that game, that changed his life. That's what he wanted. Let's go to the next one. That's another picture. I think they're playing Milltown there. That's Kevin Carnes getting rebound. That's Larry Bird. Back there, you see 45, Steve Land. I can't see who the other guy is. And who was in that you noticed that's your...
Oh, this is against Leavenworth and George Coleman.
Yeah.
Billy
My
Coleman.
cousin.
Yeah, because it's there in that one. And that would have been in that time frame. I think it's 71. Next. Okay. So this is the game, the same game at Paoli where Larry said it changed my life. Next. Okay, so Mark makes all conference. Next. There, that's Mark there. Who's that shooting? Is that Kevin Carnes? Oh, they're going for a rebound. Oh, it's Steve Lamb. Never mind. Okay, next. So then Mark goes to Oakland City. Next. There's Mark, number 32, and back at Oakland City. There's Mark scoring against Indiana University Southeast. Next. I like that one. It's at Oakland City. Okay. So that was the Mark era. So then I go in the book, I kind of go into Jim Jones here. This is when they won. So let me back up and talk about another event that brought us to Larry. I wouldn't be here if this hadn't happened. Jim Jones started coaching in 62, 63. They played Ireland in the final game that had Dave Small on the team. I know Dave, mine's blank on the other guys. Valley lost that by a point, 20-19. They were holding the ball some, but anyway, that's the way that ended up. This is Jones' first year of coaching. He's 5-16 going into the sectional, but they at least get to the final game. Now, you know how it is in Indiana. You're going to get 2 years. So the next year, he's got to do better. Next. Okay. So the next year, and that's what that picture of was too. The next year, he came in at 6-12. And I found an Evansville paper that said, Jones gone. He beat Ferdinand. He beat a Ferdinand team, St. Ferdinand, the Catholic school then. He beat a St. Ferdinand team that were 18-2, and probably would have went deep in the state. I gave a talk to this bunch to tell them about how important it was for Jim Jones to have won that game, or we wouldn't be talking about Larry Bird, because if Jim had won that game and gone deep into the tournament, he would have gotten fired. And we wouldn't be talking about Larry Bird. I really believe that, because Jim Jones made that much difference in his life. So I was telling this Ferdinand group this, and they were all throwing stuff at me and hollering. And we don't give a, we wanted to win that game, and women were crying, and cheerleaders. People take their stuff seriously. So there he is coming down the next there. So that's Jim Jones. Next. That's just another picture. That's Jim there. So in the book, I write that Jim Jones is point. Let's talk a little bit about Jim Jones. So Larry needed a father figure, and I don't know how many of you know Jim, but Jim's he's a disciplinarian. He's no nonsense. Good coach. I call him a quiet Jack Butcher. He always said that all games, regular season games, it don't matter how many you win or lose, it's to prepare you to go deep into the state. So that was kind of his philosophy. And he and Steve Holland in Biddy basketball noticed something about Larry, that he had a court sense as a little kid, different on defense, and where the ball was going. He was always moving and watching the floor and doing things in reaction, maybe 2 or 3 moves ahead, because he could see what was going to happen. Now, he wouldn't say that now, because one of the things I ran into in writing this book is how much we project on Larry's greatness. We project how good he got onto his past. I'm gonna give you some stories and show you some things about how that got wrong, because it's like Abraham Lincoln, he could have whipped a bear when he was 10 years old or something, I don't know. But I'll give you some examples of what I'm talking about. That really helped Larry. When Larry got in 8th grade, and there was a lot going on in his family, they moved 8 times. I think they were moving the last time. And the dad was having some problems. He was acting it out on the court, because people had slammed the basketball, he'd argue with the refs, and he finally got kicked off the team. I always wondered what game that was and what exactly happened. So I got a hold of the yearbooks, of the 8th grade yearbook there, and they were playing Lagode. And in that game, Larry had scored maybe 8 points the first quarter, and then none after that. And Wayne Flick had scored about 30 and won the game. So I think he got really frustrated about that, because he didn't like to lose. So he got kicked off the team, and Jim Jones had Steve Holland, Gary Holland, to go to Larry's mom and say, look, you need to tell Larry to tone it down, because he's going to be a pretty good player. I think they told him that he's going to be the best player they've ever seen. At the time, neither one of them believed it. They just wanted him to play because they knew he was going to be pretty good. Next, please. 69, Honeyberg, Jim Jones, Mark Bird. And you might recognize others. I don't. Next, please. That's Jim, and I think in the same game, Jim and Gary Holland. Next. That's them. Next. There's Larry. He played football and then broke his collarbone, and then never played football. But there he is in Jersey. Next. Here he is here. 12. Back when he was okay. Next. There he is in another picture. Next. There he is. So I show these pictures, so this is a kid. He's not a Superman yet. Nobody knows he's going to be that good. Next. There he is cross country. Next. And this is his sophomore year. So we come across probably the best example of how stories get exaggerated. Larry's sophomore year, he has a so-so freshman year. He says he wasn't very good. I think he won the free throw award for percentage, which Mark still holds the highest percentage, and he'll let you know about that too, if you ask him. It's one thing he did better than his brother. So Larry breaks his ankle in the first game of junior varsity. He's not playing varsity, he's playing junior varsity. And he doesn't get to play again. He has to wear a cast till about the last 3 games of junior varsity. And the coach says, if you can play in those last 3 games, I'll let you dress for the sectional. So he does. And he dresses for the sectional. So in his book Drive, he says that he's at the sectional game. This is the game that changed his life. This is story number 2. This is the game that changed my life. So he's in there and at the game, and he hears somebody calling out his name. They are playing West Washington. And he goes, coach is putting him in. So in his book Drive, he says, I go in and boom, I hit a long one. Pandemonium. Boom, I'm hitting. I'm making shots. I'm passing. I'm rebounding. I'm playing defense. And then I score the 2 winning free throws. And the next day, the headlines say, Larry Bird saves the day. Boy, I was so excited. I couldn't wait to dig into those box scores and find that headline. And I looked and I looked and I looked and I looked. Let's go to the next one. Okay, next. There it is. Larry Bird, 1 for 9. And 2 free throws. Steve Land, 9 for 18, 25 points. A real hero of the game. Which Larry doesn't point that out either. I think he and Steve kind of had some dances there with things in that regard. Well, I found another one, and I went to the scorebook. He did actually make 2 for 9, not 1 for 9. And then I found this nugget of a narrative in the Springs Valley newspaper, which you have to, it's not online, you have to go pick it up. It's a big book you can hardly carry, look at it. And I found where a guy talked about the game, and he said, and the surprise of the game was sophomore Larry Bird, who came in and made 2 quick shots under the basket and changed the momentum of the game, and then scored the winning foul shots. So, Larry didn't lie, it's just how I remembered it. When I wrote my book,
That's a good one.
no, it's true. When I wrote my book and I started making notes and I started reading the paper, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm wrong half the time. And not just about the good things, but the bad things. I was wrong both ways. I just didn't quite remember it right. So you gotta love the newspapers. And then when you got 3 different newspaper articles about the same thing, that really helps you hone in. And God bless Jerry Burge, because he was such a great storyteller with details. We'll talk about Jerry in just a moment. So I looked for that headline. You want to go to the next one? Okay, well, this is with 37 seconds showing Larry Bird is up for Hawks at 2 free throws. Okay, next. Land Bird. Propel Springs Valley, 58 to 57. So that's when I got, and boy, thank God my wife shut me down. I couldn't wait to get in there and write about that. Oh, like, this doesn't do it. She said, no, just say it. Don't make Larry mad. Don't make anybody mad. Just put it as it's in the paper, and it'll speak for itself. So that was very wise. And I realized later, as I say, that Larry wasn't lying. This is just how Larry remembered it. Next. But that story gets retold as the truth, because that's the only story out there. So in my book, I corrected it. Well, I don't think Larry's read my book yet. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, 11.
So this is that year. This, again, there's Steve Land, there's Danny King, there's Tony Clark. That junior team, the next year, and Larry started on it, it was those 3 guys, and Brad Bledsoe would have been a sophomore, and then Larry was a junior. But it was senior-led. Steve Land broke every scoring and rebounding record that year, every one of them. All-time career, single game, rebounding. Some of those still stand or stood for a long time in blue chip conference championship. When Steve got the ball for career points and everybody signed it, Steve showed me this basketball, he's got it in his basement. It says, from Larry Bird, it says, to number one after me. That guy, he was doing trash talking, he bet on that. So, okay, and there's, okay. Next, so I got some here, so just to show you how good Larry was, these are the kinds of headlines. Larry did not get one headline his junior year. In fact, in the Courier, it talked about those seniors with Steve Land as the main cog. Larry wasn't mentioned that as well. My point here is, even by Larry's junior year, he wasn't there yet. You see how we project back, and Jim Jones and many people have talked about his junior year, about how sensational he was. I would say the last half of the season, he got there. The problem was he was 6'3". So he was good. And there's an old, have you ever heard this story about Oakland City? There's an old myth in Oakland City. I don't know if it's true or not. It's a story that Mark went to the coach and said, I got a brother, he needs a scholarship because that's the only way we're gonna, he's gonna make it because I got one, he needs one. And the coach says, is he great? And Mark says, no, he's good. And the coach says, we've got good, we need great. Now, I always laughed about that, the coach wasn't very smart, but I suspect there was some truth to that, because the guy's 6'3". I came across an article, I'm doing an article now, maybe a book, back up a little bit. A guy, I did a book signing at Terre Haute, guy came up and said, my dad took all the pictures of Indiana State basketball, all of them for years. He said, I got pictures of Larry Bird nobody's seen. He said, I got some of Larry Bird playing basketball in blue jeans. And I said, hey, still picture book, I'll do the narrative. And so I started writing a story about how Larry got to Indiana State, and I found out that a lot of those stories aren't quite precise, just like this, they're not lying. For example, how many of you remember who was there before Bob King came? Gordon Stauffer. How many remember Gordon Stauffer? He's a great guy, super guy, nice guy. And he claimed in a 1979 newspaper article, I just came on this, was doing research, that he was after Larry his junior year. He was projecting the same way because he said, this guy's going to change everything. Well, Larry was 6'3". He was good, but he wasn't great. And I think Stauffer wanted to remember it that way. People start doing that when they tell Larry stories, right? Hey, I got to jazz it up and I'm in it. But I don't know. Gordon might hit me if he was in there, I don't know. So let's see what Steve Land was there next. There's Steve against Milltown. I don't know, who's 24 at Milltown? That's Dave Smith. And that would have been in the sectionals?
Semifinal round.
Okay. Thank you for reading that. Next. That's another against Salem. That would have been in the regional. Next. There's Larry, Tony, Beezer, Danny King, and Steve Land. So that'd be Larry's junior year. Next. Steve Land and Tony Clark. Next. Steve and Tony getting the trophy. They only got one trophy that year. It was a holiday tournament. They lost the conference to Lagodi. That was a game where Jack Butcher outcoached Jim Jones. They shut down Steve Land. And Springs Valley had a chance to win the last seconds. Beezer took the shot, and I've heard people at Lagodi in Springs Valley talk about that. That ball, this is in the Courier and Press, no, in the Journal Courier. That ball went up and down in that net. You ever seen a ball do that? Like 3 times, and then it got on the backboard or on the back, and then it fell off into Billy Butcher's hands. So Lagodi won that one. So they didn't get a conference championship. Orleans beat them in an upset. They beat Orleans, just knocked them up the side of the head, and they got beat in the sectional. So that's the only trophy they got that year. 18-2, and there's no pictures of them on the wall or anything. I call it the forgotten team. Next. This is this is on the back of the book. I always thought that this was a picture of Larry winning the game, but a Lagodi guy called me and said, no, that's Alan Crane. He's just scored the winning basket over Danny King. Danny King's explaining to Larry, and Larry's pissed. And I thought, well, that makes sense. That's what you're looking at there. So isn't that funny that if you don't know what you're looking at, you're seeing something else? And that was that game at Lagodi in Larry's junior year. Next. Another picture of Crane scoring against Steve Land, and there's Larry, and there's Danny King next. Okay, so we could, let's just go through these real quick maybe. Then we start getting really neat. I stand corrected. Larry did get one headline his junior year, and here it is, even though he wasn't the main guy. Guy couldn't resist it. They beat Washington in an overtime. Blackhawks Barry Hatch by giving them the bird. Okay, next. That's Larry and Tony Clark in junior and seniors. Next. That's Steve breaking the record. Scoring against Milltown again. Not sure who those guys are. That's Randy for Orleans. Randy Stevens. And that's Larry and Beezer watching, and you can see Kurt Gilstrap to the side. That was that junior season sectional all-stars. Senior year. So, what happened between Larry's junior and senior year? You can see in the picture. Steve was taller than Larry. Steve's about 6'5". This is the end of the year. Larry's taller. Larry grows 4 inches. He's 6'7", his senior year. And I talk in the book, and I quoted Mike here about how stunned the Jasper people were when they saw him. The coach didn't even know who it was. And they were saying, that can't be Larry Bird. And Mike said something, I can just see it. It's like it was a cartoon that had been stretched. So that's what that was like. He lifted weights that year, and a lot of people, I used to weight train people, and you can tell the difference. You know, he's put on some muscle that made a difference. And they were 2-2 or 3-2 when they played Jasper. So they weren't doing very well his senior year. Jim Jones quit after that loss in the sectional. He quit. He was going to have Larry Bird the next year, and he quit because he did not see Larry Bird coming. So when Jim Jones talks about how great he was, you know, he's remembering it, you know, in a more exciting way. So Gary Holland takes over. He figures they might win 12 or 14 games. Everybody else is saying they might win half. And they're 3-2 at the beginning of the year, and then they play Jasper, and this is a turning point. Because Jasper's rated, what, 4th or 6th at that time, I think? I think 6th maybe. What does that mean? But anyway. And you guys had just come over a bitter loss to Memorial. If you remember that, I suppose. And you'd had a great game. You had pictures all over the place in the Courier. So you went to Jasper, and they beat you like a drum, didn't they?
Yes.
And that night, Mike, you can tell the story. You went home and you got a phone call.
Yeah, we lost that night and we got home and phone rang when my parents picked it up and said, Larry Bird wants to talk to you. He's on the other end of the line here. Of course, I didn't believe it. There were people laughing. And so I still didn't know if it was Larry Bird or not, but more or less said, hey, you know, he laid it on pretty good tonight. And, but
Well, he talked trash during the game, didn't he?
You know, he didn't really say much. We didn't talk much during the game, but I remember that phone call. Yeah, he called at night and said, hey, you know, there were people laughing. They were at a party somewhere, and so I think it was proven later that it was.
Yeah, Brad Bledsoe asked me, he's at the party, he says, oh yeah, I called your coach too.
That I didn't know about.
Yeah, that didn't do the
until
books.
later, yeah, so,
Yeah.
but,
So that gave him a new incentive, and up to that point in the papers, people were complaining about their play. And the editor, the sports editor, was friends about the paper, said, hey, give these guys a chance. So Larry wasn't there yet. but when he was, he just was. I mean, this guy's scoring 30, 40, 50 points a game, setting rebounding records. Where does that come from? I think, and now we come to the riddle of Gary Holland. I talk in some place about this, I may have said it this way in the book. Jim Jones put Larry Bird in a cage of discipline. He needed discipline, and he put him in that cage, and he made him a good player and made him work hard. He's the one that Larry talks about. He said, Coach Jones is the one that when I wanted to quit early, he says, hey, there's somebody out there shooting more foul shots than you. And they're running another lap. And Larry never got over that. He just kept pushing himself. Well, I think if he'd had Jim Jones' senior year, I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about Larry Bird. I really don't. Because when Gary Holland came along, he opened up that cage. I mean, he opened it up and let Larry go. And Larry did. And Larry's confidence and everything, it just all came together during that year. So let's look through this, and then I want to look at the Crawford County stuff. Jones resigns, next. That's some Gary Holland stuff. He went to University of Louisville. Would have been, may have played NBA ball, except he ran into Wes Unseld. Really bad, broken leg. That's their senior year. They're down in the senior year. Larry again. That's Larry's first basket of his senior year at Pekin Eastern. Next. I have several shots of Larry getting tips, and he always did that. He turned his back to push you away. So that's a technique, and that's against Eastern too, I think. Next. That's I got all of Larry's goof ups too. That's Kurt Gilstrap scoring over Larry. Next. This was a big game for him against Orleans. Yep. And okay, Orleans won that. They won that first game. Next. I just put this in here. I think that's so iconic. And that's Mike there. If you don't recognize him, Mike, you've changed a little bit, haven't you? That's Larry playing for Jasper. But it's just so captures, I think, the moment. Next. Then we get Jerry Burge having fun. And Jerry Burge is another guy that we might not be here if it ended with Jerry Burge, because he's the one that made Larry known to the world. People weren't paying any attention. You gotta remember, we didn't have this Facebook and all that stuff. And so you had to have an advocate for you. I don't think Gary Holland was a very good advocate. He didn't know how. Jim Jones, I don't think, saw that as being, at that point in time, particularly important. Of course, he'd gone on to Princeton by that time, or soon after. Next. So now we're getting into sectional games, and that's a sectional game. There's Mike again, but next. That's another one of Larry turning against Kurt Gilstrap. If you wanted to know who was the better getting the tip, it was apparently Larry. Next. That's Paoli. That's Carnes and Carnes, I believe. Next. Another one, Larry. It might be against Mitchell. I'm not sure. These are just pictures. These are rare pictures I think people have not seen until I started digging them up. Real quick story. Okay. Kind of thing you start seeing Larry's name in. So, how many have been to the museum at Terre Haute? Larry Bird Museum. So when they were putting that together, they couldn't find Larry Bird pictures of high school. And they started looking at Facebook. One day my telephone rang. Hey, you guys got all these pictures? Where are you coming from? Can you tell? They didn't know who they were. They had pictures of Mark Bird they thought were Larry. So they ended up hiring me, and I helped them figure all that out, and I made sure the narrative was correct. 20 years ago running the world now. So they didn't know who Larry Bird was or what they were looking at. It's kind of interesting. Next. Another game shot. Next. Larry against Paoli. You can tell, this is coming a little bit of awkwardness with it. I mean, again, he's a high school player. Next. That's Larry breaking the scoring record for Springs Valley against Crawford. Next. That's the muscle part where he lifted weights. Next. Next. I just like that shot because it's such a nice shot. That's against Paoli. Next. Not sure who they were playing, I think they were playing, either Leavenworth or Milltown in that game. Can anybody tell for sure? I think it was in the sectionals. Oh, can't tell the numbers. Next. That's the Lagodi game. So, Lagodi, Larry's senior year, it's for the championship of Blue Chip Conference. That place hosts 3,700 people. It's estimated there were 3,000, 2,800. It's just a little over 3,000. It's estimated there were 4,200 to 4,800 people in there. I was one of them. There were 6 college coaches there, including Bobby Knight, and these people are about 3 or 4 deep out on the playing floor. So it was packed and it was hot that night. And Billy Butcher outshot Larry. I think I got a picture. If you go to the next. Again, there's Larry scoring against Lagodi. Next. And there's Larry scoring from the corner. Wayne Flick and Mike Wall and Billy Butcher there. Next. Brad Bledsoe, that's Alan Crane there. Brad would start as a sophomore, as a freshman some too. Next. Okay, so I want to go ahead, that's another picture of you guys in the regional, Mike. I want to get to some sectional games though I think that are coming up. Just keep going to the next. Yeah, so we got Milltown. I've lost the string because I've got so many games in my head of when they met Milltown. Did they play them in the first game of the sectional that year?
No. Probably semifinals, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, let me see. I looked that up.
Who would they would have been
I
Leavenworth?
think that was 75.
Yes. I'm sorry, 74.
Oh, 74. Played Paoli, then Leavenworth, then Milltown.
Okay,
Played Milltown the final game.
okay, so that's the final game. Next. Now, and my book is full of all these games, by the way. I mean, play by play, some of them, because they're pretty exciting. You know, at the time you don't know who's going to win. You look at it, they only won, but they were pretty close. So there's their sectional trophy. Next. Now that's the one where I think of when Mike's is like he's stretched out like a cartoon. Next. The takeout. Next. So I've done some work on how many teams beat Larry and almost beat Larry. Orleans got him twice. Washington got him once. Who else? I think 4 or 5 teams beat him in the 2 years that he played varsity. So he wasn't Superman. There were teams that were able to beat him, and South Knox almost did it. And that game was at the, what's the auditorium called in Vincent's, Adams.
And the Coliseum.
Yeah, Coliseum there. Yes, they had to move there because it was such a big game. Next. Another Larry, I think that's against Mitchell. That's another Bledsoe. Larry shooting next. Bledsoe next. Next, that's Brownstown. So here's where Jerry Bird starts putting in this stuff about Larry Bird and putting him kind of on the map. Larry says in Drive, he said my big breakthrough was when some guy from Jasper started putting stuff out there about me. So I wanted to take care of that. That's actually got a newspaper or a magazine article in a history journal about Jerry's impact on Larry's life. Next, the Burgess love me. So, okay, that's James Carr. John. The Fighting, Jasper and the regional, we'll come to that in just a minute. Next. That's their sectional win. Larry's kind of standing back there and letting others enjoy it. Next. Jasper again. There's Middletown. That's Dave trying to block one of Larry's shots. I've got a one of Tim Eubanks trying to block a shot, and he claims he blocked, but I can't tell. They did not like each other, and they spent more time on the floor wrestling each other than Next. There it is. Now, has he blocked him or not? I don't know. Next. Okay, that's against Mitchell. Next. Okay, that's it. I put up there, he did score on him. In fact, we'll come back to regional. Keep going through there. I want to get a picture. That's against Brownstown. Next. Okay,
You know, he's
next.
not only real tall, but his arms are so long.
Well, yeah,
I keep thinking,
he's gonna be 6'9".
oh, does it?
Yeah, he gets to be 6'9". He hasn't gotten all his
arms are so
growth.
long.
I did not get that, did I? I was talking about how I've got 6'9.5" wingspan, but I didn't grow like that. I love this picture. It's a picture of Larry, not sure what's gonna happen to him. It's for the regional. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? Of Larry kind of looking off and wondering, well, how did I get here and what's gonna happen? It's really neat. Next. That's, the Carnes boys and Larry really like to study all, don't they? Next. That's against Jasper, the regional. Next. That's Larry's last jump shot. So I want to talk about the regional. Lagodi, Lagodi, Bedford, Springs Valley, and Jasper. And Lagodi plays Bedford, who they had beat pretty handily in the regular season in that first game. Lagodi got upset. Bedford did not have a winning record coming into the regional. And then that second game was Jasper and Springs Valley. And it was down to a basket. And how many times did that ball bounce up before it rolled away? 3 times, 4 times? It came close. And so my understanding of the defense was your coach came up with Jeff Bobble outside guarding Larry, and you and Jeff guarding when he came in. That wore Larry out. It worked. It just didn't work for you in enough time. But it worked in the next game when they played Bedford. Bedford upset them. Jerry Burge has this, and let me talk a little bit, and then we'll open up. I got some more. I want to show you some Crawford County pictures. Maybe I'm not, my thought has escaped. Let's go and maybe I'll come back to that. Okay, that's Larry playing against Bedford, being scored against next. Larry and Jeff Bobble. It's on the front of the book. Next. Keep going, let's get to some of the okay, that's Larry, keep going. Okay, he was the Southwest Indiana Player of the Year. Next. He signs at IU. So I've got, the last chapter of the book is Larry's lost year. He goes to IU, walks out after 28 days, never plays a single game, goes home. His mom and dad have gone to Oakland City to see Mark play, so him and another guy drive there. He walks into the gym there at Oakland City, and the mom says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "I quit." She didn't talk to him for 2 months after that. She was so mad. So what he did is he started playing at West Baden at the Northwood Institute. He went to all the practices, but he quit. And then he got a job. And in the book Drive, I missed this, but in the book Drive, Larry says, "I knew what I was doing. I never wanted to go to IU. Everybody wanted me to go to IU. I cried the night before I went in to sign and told my mom I didn't want to go. She said, 'No, you got to get the college education.'" He said, "I finally did what I needed to do, and that is go out and get a job and think about it. I don't know what I want to do, but I'm going to go work, and I'm going to go think about it." And that went along pretty well. They bought a car, and things were going along well, and then his dad killed himself. And that just shattered him. And then we get some more names that changed Larry's life. A guy named Chuck Akers, football coach, went to Larry and said, "Larry, you need to put a basketball in your hand. Come play AAU basketball." Now, in doing this thing I'm doing about how Larry got to Indiana State, I've discovered something new. I don't know if I should share with you or not. You don't want to come out and tell everybody. Swear you won't. So, what I discovered was that Larry was playing basketball almost every weekend at 48 team tournaments and 12 and 16 team tournaments. AAU, independent, all over the state against ex-pros and college players. He never put the basketball down. And what really turned me on to this is right after he went to Indiana State, somebody said to the coach, and it was a newspaper article, they said, "He won't be any good, he hasn't been playing basketball." And another guy says, "Oh no, he's been playing basketball all the time." And I thought, I didn't know that. So I started looking it up, and I started looking at those newspaper articles. I thought, oh my gosh, he's winning most valuable player in all these different games. So he was on when he got there. He was ready to play. Still wanted it and did it his way. And that goes back to what I said earlier. You gotta find your gift and you gotta find your way. Those are two things. I think Larry knew his gift. He just hadn't found the way yet. Next. Bird flies up here. I love what they do with it. This is when he went left IU. Next. Now he's at Northwood. Next. That's the only picture of Larry in the Northwood players uniform I found. And that's, it's in this magazine here. I wrote an article about that. Also wrote about his AAU days, which is sold out now. Next. And that's the AAU team. Larry's dad had been dead 2 weeks. Look at Larry. He looks like death warmed over. I lost my dad at a young age too. I was during the blizzard of '78. I was working with the Department of Transportation for Illinois, so I know what that feels like. So here's another story that's not true. That's in all the books. Larry was the most valuable player. So a guy up there holding the trophy. That's not Larry Bird. It's a guy next to Larry Bird. That is Terry. He went played at Bellarmine. He was in New Albany. Morrison. Terry Morrison. He was a little bit older. He won it, not Larry. The reason that got told wrong, they weren't lying, but Larry tells a story in Drive that his grandma, he stayed with his grandma a lot, was always asking, "Where's your trophy, Larry?" And he said, "It's one I got most valuable player on." Well, he got it playing with the Holman Stars in those tournaments over the weekend, and they came in second place, but he was the most valuable player. It wasn't in this game. I watched this guy. He went to Louisville. He was from Carbondale, Illinois. I watched him represent Southern Illinois in the state tournament. We were cheering for Carbondale. We kind of became friends after this. Okay, next. Okay, All-Star Larry. Next. 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 Okay, let's get. Okay. Who do we have here? Who is number 31? Inlow. Have you seen this one?
No,
Okay. So this is the game against Dale in the sectionals, right, at Tell City?
yes.
Okay. So there is Inlow, Joe Ash, and then back there is Eastridge. And that one. Yeah. Next. That's Leavenworth, right, cutting down the nets for, that'd have been, what was it? Yeah, Leavenworth, that would have been in '67. Yeah, when
Scotty Benz.
Oakland City was,
Scotty Benz.
yeah. Next, English knocks off Ferdinand, so you can see all the names there. Let's see, so you got 5 points. Terry? So who was the main gun on that team?
Denny Oxley. Denny Oxley.
Okay. Had a good team. I think you were a little above 500, played some good games. Next. Who's number 31? I got 2 pictures of you shooting. And is that Eastridge there? Looks like it, yeah. It'd have to be. Hard-working Larry Eastridge, it says here. Next. Okay, Coach Ferguson. I think that's in that, when they went deep into the state. Next. And there they are there, the Milltown team. I've got a quote in my book at the end of one part where a sports writer is writing about the excitement of the state tournament. And let me find that and read that to you if I can, because he wrote it about Milltown. And he said, I really like it. Yeah, by the way. Anyway, he talks about how exciting it was. He says, it's like these communities, it's like catching lightning in a jar. It just shuts down the community. That's all they can think about. And so that was happening here. Next. Gotta put the cavemans in there. And, where is, I went to school with Jerry Hanger. He's in there somewhere. Is he number 42? Yeah. Next, 69-70. That's a game Carnes rebounded against Milltown, I believe, Leavenworth. That's been there before. Some of these are repeats. Next. Okay, that was Milltown, where he's bringing the ball down, and that's Mark Walton. That Larry's in front of. Next. That is Steve Land, and who is he shooting over? Milltown. Let's see, next. And that is Steve Land shooting over Milltown there. The alternative team, good for you. Next. And that's another shot of Carnes shooting against, these are shooting against Milltown. Next. And that's, you've seen that one before. Okay. So, you could talk about a lot of different things, but I think the takeaway for me is, again, there were a lot of people and events in Larry's life that made it possible for him to do. He was blessed. He was blessed. It was not magic. It was a lot of help, and then it was drive. It was Larry's drive. I mean, he took that, what Jim Jones said, and you know, I read about him, and he'd be upstairs running around stadiums when they were going and playing other NBA teams, and the other team, there'd be Larry up there running around getting in shape, but he liked to monkey with your head too, I guess, as you know. What did he say to Jeff Bobble when Jeff would guard him at the Rizzo? Is that the one where he said, "Come on, Mr. Quarterback"?
Yeah, he'd be out in the dead corner, you know, way out in, almost on the out of bounds line. He'd say, "Come on out, Mr. Quarterback, you know, try and guard me." And Jeff told me all he could, his foot would be on the out of bounds line. He'd be swishing jump shots from the dead corner.
Yeah.
Nothing but net. Yeah.
I have the shot charts. I should look that stuff up because it makes me wonder, you know, being that way. But you don't, I remember seeing Larry play at that Lagodi game, and I was just amazed. I mean, it was almost, I couldn't express what that was like, because Billy Butcher would come down and hit, you know, a three-pointer, but they didn't have three-pointers, Alan Crane, and then Larry Bird. But the one thing you can tell, there's a film you can see on the internet about 11 minutes of that game, and you can tell if Lagodi's got the ball or if Valley's got the ball, because when Lagodi's got the ball, pass, shot. When Springs Valley's got the ball, dribble, shoot. just a different kind of the way he played. There's also a sound of that game, all but the last 2 minutes. I want to say one last thing about Jerry Burge and what was so great about Jerry Burge, because you see it in his reporting. When I was reading about what Jerry Burge said about that Lagodi Springs Valley game at Springs Valley, the one that Larry said he always wished he'd had back, Jerry corrected all the histories out there. All the histories about Larry Bird say that Larry scored 2 points for Lagodi at the wrong end on a jump ball. And when I read it, I said, that's not right. I remember standing up and Lee Cavanaugh sitting there, sit down, they waved it off. He'd walked. And Jerry said that as well. So when I read it, I thought, I don't remember that. And then I read Jerry said, no, they waved it off. But then Jerry said, the key to the game, and this was Jerry's great insight. He said the key to that game was 11 seconds left in the third quarter when Mike Mattingly, he didn't mention Mike, but it was Mike, knocked him out, hit him with an elbow in his throat. And Larry went down and was still for just a few seconds and got back up because they had to use a timeout. Remember how they lost that game? They had the ball, they had the lead, and Beezer got in a corner and called the timeout. And Lagodi got 2 shots, technical, and he got the ball back and got lost in the game. The other thing that bothers me when I look at stuff, Larry always rode Beezer really hard, and I think he enjoyed doing that. I think he had a little bit of a mean streak with that. Because I got to look at some of that stuff. He blamed Beezer for losing that Bedford game, but I looked at the shot charts, and who scored. Beezer scored more points in the last quarter than Larry did, and somebody threw that ball away when they had a chance to go ahead. And I asked people, who threw that ball away? And I don't think they wanted to say because it was such not a good thing. They probably would have went deep in the tournament with that team. Of course, Bedford went on out of that. Questions? Yes.
I think the panel of section that year, the All-Stars, I think they could have been in the end All-Star. I think they might have beat them.
Yes, yeah,
Man, they had a good team.
yeah. It's interesting how that stuff works. It's interesting to tell you something I've discovered. Tony Clark's the one that told Coach Stauffer about Larry his junior year. So they were looking, but they were looking at Steve Land first, and then there was Larry. But he was good, but he wasn't great yet. And then Tony, when Stauffer got pushed out, and new coach came in, and new assistant coach Bill Hodges came on, Tony said, "Hey," he told Bill Hodges, "You need to go look at Larry." So you never hear anything about Tony Clark and his part in all of this. There's another interesting part. I talked to Jerry Reynolds. Jerry Reynolds coached, he coached for the Sacramento Kings, NBA, who's from Springs Valley. And he was at West Georgia. And Danny King was going to come down there. And then lo and behold, I read in a Georgia paper that Larry Bird was coming with him. Did you know that? And then, because Jerry Reynolds was going to be promoted to head coach, Kaiser was retiring. Well, Kaiser decided he wanted 2 more years. So Jerry went to Rockhurst, Danny went to Indiana State, and Larry followed him. But before Jerry left, Bob King at Indiana State called him and said, "Hey, I want you to be the assistant coach here." And Jerry said, "I'm going to Rockhurst, but there's a guy by the name of Bill Hodges down at Armstrong State you might want to check with." And that's how he got there. And of course, Larry came because of Bill Hodges, because Bill Hodges is the one that was kind of hit that kind of caring person that Larry needed. So there's all these just, what would have happened if Jerry hadn't recommended him? What would have happened if this hadn't happened? What if this, who knows? But I think one of those could have been detrimental to the whole thing.
Got a quick question about, early on in this presentation, you mentioned his mother had a great impact on him. But how? How do you think she influenced him?
She was the mother we should all have. She was loving, but wanted him to do his best and expected it out of him. Mark started staying with the grandma, the Kearns grandma. They loved it there because they got everything they wanted. You stay up late and all sorts of things. And then Larry later on. But I would say that love, and he always came back to see her. And they butted heads some, but I think they shared a lot in common. She was a big woman too, by the way. But I guess I don't think the dad was all that big. It came from her side. But that you see that her strength and stuff. There are a lot of stuff I didn't put in about Larry and the family that was in the papers, and the things she had to put up with, and the strength she had to carry on. Well, she was doing 3 jobs in some cases. I read in a Sacramento paper that they interviewed Jerry Reynolds, and he told 3 things that Larry did. He stole some money and done this and done that. And I said, that can't be true. So I called Kevin Carnes. He said, yeah, I'll tell you all about it. So, but back then, people could do things in a community, right? They made a mistake. They're your neighbor's kids. One more really neat Jerry Reynolds story. Jerry's mom still lived in French Lick when she died. And Jerry's brother Randy was taking care of her, mowing her yard and stuff, and he got sick. So Jerry called her and said, "Are you okay? Did you get your yard mowed?" She said, "Yeah, one of the bird boys." She said, the mom's name said, "Her boy did it." She said, "Which one?" So I don't know. What was Larry? she didn't know the difference. It was Larry Bird. So.
Well,
Hey, Randy, one question. You alluded to it. The story was always that Danny King had a major influence in Larry going to Indiana State. Did you find that to be true?
I'm trying to run that down, and that brings up another thing. When I started doing this stuff, I ran into what I call the Larry Bird Mafia. Because Larry sit down and he said, "I don't want any of this stuff told." And for years, none of those guys, Beezer, none of them would talk. When I started writing this, and they saw their stories were going to be in here, they were telling me all sorts of things, and and all but Danny King. And Danny King, I said, "Danny, your picture's going to be in the back of the book, all your stuff." He said, "Thank you, I love you for this." And he said, "I want Larry mad at me." So he was going to go with Danny down to apparently to, West Georgia. I think absolutely, I
So
think,
Danny was playing at Indiana State at the time already, right?
well, he went up there and Larry was right behind him. So I don't know when that all happened, but Danny going there helped, because he liked Danny, he trusted Danny. But he had Tony Clark there too, Tony had been there for a year, they all graduated together. I really believe there's a really strong connection there, but Danny and Larry still stay pretty close, and I don't think Larry has read this book, I don't think he's ever gonna read it. He's not a reader. I got a guy.
You just said you want.
Well, I'm gonna get him, the guy that his dad took all the pictures, I'm gonna go up there in a couple of weeks, and he's gonna get Max Gibson's son there, and he said, bring a book, we'll give it to him, he'll give it to Larry. We'll see. But, you know, I had a lot of fun writing it. And it's about our day, too. It's about us. It's about the baby boomers. And it's time to talk about those things, because we're not here much longer. We're not. I've got people dying all around me, you know.
You know, I went to school in Du Bois County, and, I graduated from Du Bois High School, not Jasper, but,
Right.
you know,
The
Du Bois
Jeeps.
High School, the Jeeps, in 71. And I can't remember this Beezer you're talking about, is that a surname or a nickname? Who's Beezer?
There's John and there's Jim. So James, Beezer's one or the other, and they were cousins. Now,
But is that the last name then, or is
no,
that a
Beezer,
nickname?
Carnes, Beezer
Oh, those
Carnes.
were Carnes,
Yeah,
okay.
and
okay.
Beezer got his name, I think, from Larry. So there was Beezer, and there was Kevin, and there was Charlie. We want to ask Gerald about Charlie. Charlie, did you know Charlie was Beezer's brother?
No,
Yeah,
I heard that.
They passed he's the one that scored a last second, that won in the sectional against Jasper's.
Well, let's wrap up here. There's gonna be more opportunities to ask questions, I believe, but first of all, let's give you big thanks. Thank you, Randy. And the book is fantastic, so I do hope you'll take advantage of getting these books up here. They were great reads. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate it very much.